snapping of the fingers. When I slap, you snap. There you go. And here's what the part sounds like that we all sing together. It goes like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Put 'em on, get better. 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 Yeah. All right, you've got that, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you for saying that confidently. We're gonna come back to that. All right, here we go. Set out on this journey, brothers and sisters, with provisions of love, grace, and forgiveness. With conviction, we are all intrinsically connected, with so much in common and with beautiful difference. Put on your climbing shoes, put on your climbing shoes, put on your shoes, take me with you to the mountain top. Keep on climbing, we'll never stop. Oh yeah. And all together, 1, 2, 3, 4. Put 'em on, get better. 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 Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Now one more time, yeah. Put 'em on, get better. 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 Oh yeah, we can take this on the road.
Oh yeah.
Wade through streams, press on and push against the wind. Take my hand, build trust. Know my friend, you'll help me up. Right?
Absolutely.
Sometimes we'll run and hurdle, sometimes we'll trip and stumble over rocks and crags, steep passageways that will lift us. So put on your climbing shoes, put on your climbing shoes, put on your shoes, take me with you to the mountain top. Keep on climbing, we'll never stop. No. And when stormy clouds are covering the summit view, remember how rainbows come into bloom. Storm clouds, showers, thunder and drenching rain collide with sunshine, rays of light to ribbons of colorful change. Put on your climbing shoes, put on your climbing shoes, put on your shoes, take me with you to the mountain top. Keep on climbing, we'll never stop. Yeah, keep on hiking and we'll scale the heights. Keep on walking, walk by faith, not by sight. Oh, and all together. Put 'em on, get better. 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 Yeah.
Thank you. Heather Lynn is the connector for Harry. Tonight we will have Harry speak. All of this is timed, so I don't go jammering on, which is lovely. We will have a break after the program for those of you that need to leave or want to leave. There will be amazing discussions that happen after the program that I hope you'll all stay for, if you can. Heather Lynn is today's civil rights model. Harry Boyd has seen it before. He believes that you all are.
Well, thank you for being here. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Heather. Beautiful. I want to thank everyone who participated in putting this together. Sonia Cairns for making clear our resource needs and ways to be involved and support this work. Thank everyone for coming. I also want to recognize my colleagues from Augsburg College, Ellen Eschenbacher, who's Associate Director of the Center for Democracy and Citizenship, Dennis Donovan, who's our international organizer for public achievement and other efforts, Charlie Green from Augsburg's Development Office. So tonight is the first of what we're envisioning in a round of 10 House meetings in Minnesota to launch a national movement called We the People to improve politics and revitalize citizenship. I want to describe a little bit what we're envisioning and why Minnesota. The simple idea of We the People is to return to the founding vision embodied in the preamble to the Constitution, that government is not our savior, the government is not our enemy. We the people create government as our instrument, as our meeting ground, as our resource, as our partner in addressing our common problems, in creating thriving communities, in building a democratic society. For the 21st century, that's a challenge that is urgent and possible. We're building partnerships with different organizations. Our largest one is with America's State Colleges and Universities. We work with them across the country, especially the 230 state colleges and universities in something called the American Democracy Project. We're also enlisting Minnesotans to be partners and collaborators in this effort, and I'll describe several ways we want to do that. But I want to begin by saying there could not be a better moment than this week to talk about revitalization of citizenship. In the aftermath of the terrible shootings and tragedy in Tucson, and I must say that I've been impressed with the ways people have risen to the occasion. Political leaders, putting aside narrow partisanship, I was struck by the eloquence of John McCain in talking about the victims of the shooting across party lines, Gabrielle Giffords, who's struggling for her life. And last night, as the Wall Street Journal put it, President Obama spoke to the better angels of our nature and our democracy in an eloquent call to avoid the blame game about the shootings, but take the moment to think about how we can develop a deeper civic culture as a society. He called on us all to sharpen our instincts for empathy, to expand our moral imaginations, to listen to each other more carefully, to remind ourselves of all the ways our hopes and our dreams are bound together. And he went on to, with great sensitivity, name the victims and name the heroes and heroines who were involved this week. This is a call for citizenship. And I've been impressed with the political leaders, and I've been even more impressed with the outpouring of action and reflection and compassion from everyday citizens, especially in Tucson, who have wanted to make a statement to the nation that Tucson's soul is not defined by the shootings. That Tucson has a spirit and a possibility that's far bigger than the violence. The Reverend Janet Vincent, who was eloquent after 9/11, an Episcopal priest in Washington, D.C., explained that when a trauma and a tragedy, a tearing of the social fabric like this happens, people want to show the society, the world, that they're bigger than the violence, that there's a dignity and a possibility that's bigger. All of this points towards a call for citizenship, and I would say, yeah, the reason why launching a citizenship movement tonight in Minnesota is appropriate is that this comes before the Martin Luther King weekend. the holiday weekend. It's always a powerful weekend for me. When I was a young man in my teens and early 20s, I worked for the Citizenship Education Program of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. My dad, who had been manager of the Atlanta Red Cross, went on the executive committee of SCLC in 1963. And I worked across the South in those days of the movement. I heard Dr. King practice I Have a Dream the night before he gave the speech in Washington. I saw the great moments of going to the mountain. But I think I've always thought Dr. King was one of the towering leaders of the 20th century. But I also think as a society we often pay too much attention to Dr. King and other well-known leaders. As Martin Luther King put it again and again, the real heroes and heroines of the movement were everyday citizens in communities across the South who acted with stunning courage and determination and dedication and ingenuity and intelligence. Ordinary people who were garbage collectors and domestic workers, who were teachers and business owners, who were housewives and tenant farmers, who decided to show what first-class citizenship could mean. There was a way in which the movement was a school for citizenship, not only for the participants, but for the nation. In the words of the letter from a Birmingham jail, the movement was bringing the whole country back to the great wells of democracy which had been dug deep by the Founding Fathers and too much forgotten. I think we're in a moment like that. And the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, interestingly, has another parallel to this moment, an epochal moment of change. It was formed in 1957, January 10th, to spread the Montgomery Way across the South. And Montgomery was a famous bus boycott in which thousands of black people marched and walked rather than ride the buses to protest the segregation of the buses and ended the segregation of the buses. But on a deeper level, the Montgomery Way meant a statement of citizenship itself, that actually people could act to end the system of segregation that was thought to be unchangeable, grounded in ancient history, something that couldn't be changed. And I would say today, in launching a We the People citizenship movement, the parallel is that in important ways we can talk about spreading the Minnesota way of citizenship more broadly across the country. Minnesota Way has lessons. Now what do I mean by that? Last year our Center for Democracy and Citizenship partnered with a congressionally mandated National Conference on Citizenship to study patterns of civic engagement, voluntary rates, voting rates, charitable giving, helping out with neighbors, a variety of measures of civic engagement. And Minnesota is the most engaged state in the nation. There are a few reports from last year here. This year we again partnered with the National Conference on Citizenship, looking at the Twin Cities, which is the most civically engaged community in the country, and comparing it with Miami, which is the least, according to the measures of the U.S. Census. I mean, just a few statistics are striking. 22% of residents of Miami participated in a community group. In Minnesota, it's close to 50%. 15% in Miami volunteer regularly. In Minnesota, 37% volunteer on a regular continuing basis, and more than 50% volunteer sometimes of the year. In Miami, 9% donated or helped in a political campaign. In Minnesota, the figure is 24%. Now, there are many measures, there are 50 measures of looking at civic engagement, but Minnesota is a striking example for all of our challenges, all of our difficulties, all the ways we're not immune from the erosion of civic engagement. Minnesota has really remarkable patterns of civic life, and that also continue to be revived. So we also analyzed what is at work in Minnesota. It's not simply demographics, that people have higher incomes and are more educated. That doesn't begin to explain it. In fact, in Minnesota, someone at the bottom level of income with less than a college degree is more engaged civically than someone who has an advanced degree in Miami in the top tier of income levels. And similarly, while government works in Minnesota, as I'll describe, government alone doesn't begin to explain the larger culture. So what we concluded is that there's a culture of civic empowerment in the Twin Cities that has three ingredients. The first is that Minnesotans and people in the Twin Cities and the suburbs continue to believe that actually citizens need to be at the center of public problem solving, the work of making healthy communities. In important ways, Minnesotans believe, in the words of Thomas Jefferson, that the only safe repository of the ultimate powers of the republic are the people themselves. Now that seems a simple, in some way uncontroversial concept, but in fact, mass culture that looks to supermen to fix things and asks what can we get in a kind of consumer mindset, it's strikingly unusual. And this really came home to me on September 20th when I'd just come back from South Africa, and I watched the town meeting interaction between President Obama and voters who had voted for him. And the first voter who got up and spoke said, "Mr. President, I voted for you, a man who said he was going to change things, who was going to bring solutions to the middle class, and I'm still waiting. I'm getting disillusioned. I'm tired of defending you." And then a young man who just was out of law school said, "Mr. President, I thought you were going to bring back the American dream for my generation. It hasn't happened yet." And I thought, as I heard that town meeting on CNBC, about the elephant in the room. The fact was, Barack Obama did not run a presidential campaign on the idea that he was going to fix the nation's problems. Every speech he said, "I can do only so much as president. We need a rebirth of citizenship. We need all hands on deck." Now, in that night, he gamely said all the things he had done. The media, after the town meeting, said he didn't explain enough what he had done. But I kept thinking, this is really a statement about the whole culture. We've come too much as a society to look to Superman to fix things for us and to ask what we can get rather than what we can do together. So Minnesota still believes in significant ways in the Twin Cities that we can actually do things together. We can work across lines of differences. We can engage people who think differently, and we can get things done. The second key element, again recalling Thomas Jefferson's insight, is that people often don't have the discretion to act wisely about the civic affairs of the nation. And when people don't act with a long-range vision, with a kind of political sobriety, with the ability to deal with other people, we need civic education. We need learning. And learning needs to take place not only in schools, it needs to take place everywhere. First and foremost in families, and in congregations, and in businesses, and in community groups. Not only schools, but every institution needs to be civically educative to prepare people to deal with others who are different, to prepare people to think in longer-term ways, to deal with ambiguity, to deal with open-endedness, to deal with the fact that life is messy and you make mistakes and you can learn from mistakes. Minnesota still has, we've discovered in looking at what's the key to the success of the Twin Cities, a lot of institutions which have civic dimensions, and many institutions which are renewing civic dimensions. And thirdly, the third ingredient, and I'm delighted that Greg Koenig can be here. Minnesota still has relatively strong examples of we the people government. Government which is not simply delivering services to people conceived as customers, but is our meeting ground, is our partner, is our catalyst, is our instrument in solving our problems. This is a remarkable community to launch We the People effort because of Burnsville's long history of leadership, and Elizabeth Kautz has been a national leader. Elizabeth is there.
Elizabeth.
And nationally and internationally known leader for We the People government. And the citizens of Burnsville in general, wouldn't you say, have stepped up to the plate and become partners in that process. It's not simply been you as a leader, but it's been actually people responding in the old tradition of the civil rights movement, a kind of call and response interaction. So those are the three ingredients. And I thought, we know that these can be taken more broadly. Now our own work is not only studies and research and theory building, but our own work is on the ground. And we've been involved in many, many civic initiatives over the last 20 years, which show what people can do when they're given opportunity and space and challenge. One of the initiatives which makes us convinced that young people in college campuses across the country can take an important role is an initiative called Public Achievement, in which young people do public work projects as teams on issues they're concerned about: teen pregnancy, drugs, crime, school curriculum, recreational opportunities like the skateboard park in Burnsville. Dennis Donovan's school, when he was principal of St. Bernard's, became an incubator and a model for public achievement. It's now spread to 23 countries, hundreds of communities. But in public achievement, what we've seen is that when young people are challenged and given the opportunity to learn the skills of citizenship, they develop a different sense of themselves in the world. They develop a dignity and a confidence and a skill and a public poise. They develop a sense of themselves as citizens. And this impacts the chemistry of politics. We had a very strong example of that in 1999 when then elected Jesse Ventura, as governor, met with 8 schools and public achievement teams and college coaches who were working with them. And Ventura, who had run on a citizenship campaign theme, if you remember, not with as much depth, I would say, as Elizabeth has run on, but with some good intentions, started talking about how he wanted to involve people in his government, and the young people cut him off and said, "Governor, we don't really want to hear about all the things you're going to do for us, and we certainly don't want to hear about how you're going to solve our problems. We don't believe it. What we want to do is tell you about the serious work we've been doing and ask how you can be partnered with us." So there was a completely different chemistry than the kind of infantilization and the pandering and the false promises that take place so often in electoral dynamics. And Ventura was blown away. He recognized one 13-year-old, Joey Lynch from St. Bernard's School in a playground group, as the citizen prevailing against all odds in the state legislature in his first State of the Union, and the whole legislature rose in applause. And he's talked about that encounter with young people who took themselves seriously for months afterwards. I kept thinking, when I was watching that press conference, or that televised town meeting on September 20th, what would have been the impact if there had been 2 or 3 public achievement team members in that audience who turned to each other and turned to the president and said, "Actually, we didn't elect you to solve everything for us. We're not asking you to be Superman, and we're not simply thinking as consumers of government. We want to actually act on the promise of yes, we can." So that's the premise of We the People, that we can build a citizenship movement built on the examples of the Twin Cities. There are a lot of other stories of work we've been involved with, like the Jane Addams School, working with new immigrants in St. Paul, that spilled over into a community-wide effort with the support of the mayor and the school system and the teachers union and community groups, so that everyone takes responsibility as educators of children. Or Bill Doherty's work to rethink the nature of professional practice, to once again be citizens professionals who work with people rather than simply do things for people. Or our Warrior to Citizen work, which has worked across the state about the integration of veterans coming back as citizens, not as victims, not as people you feel sorry for, but it's actually full of talent and knowledge and insight and experience that can contribute to the civic life of communities. Or our work with athletes at the University of Minnesota and other places, to think about their role as citizen athletes who have, because of their visibility and the way young people look up to them, a particular responsibility to take themselves seriously. So we are convinced that there are many, many things that the Twin Cities in Minnesota has to contribute to a citizenship movement. And here are some final elements. We think, first of all, the stories of Minnesota and the kind of key ingredients, those three elements I mentioned, need to be spread more broadly. Through citizenship conversations today on the American Democracy Project blog of the state colleges and university system, we started a moderated discussion called We the People, A Call to Citizenship. I want to invite all of you to join that. There'll be many ways to be involved in citizenship discussions. Secondly, we want to expand and develop and deepen experiences of public work, people learning to work together, like public achievement. And we've already seen in the state colleges, a number of state colleges are taking up public achievement and doing interesting things with them. Students at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, reminds me of, again, Burnsville, ran on a platform 2 years ago that they wanted to get beyond customer service student government and the celebrity model of student government. They ran on a platform, we wanted the student government to be a source, a center for civic renewal in the whole campus, and have had huge impact on the, first of all, they quadrupled the number of students that had ever voted in a student election, and they've had huge impact on the student culture. I've talked to faculty and administrators. They say that the university has really become a model. Thirdly, next year we want to have a covenant writing process, not only in Minnesota, but across the nation. We're working in Minnesota, by the way, with Campus Compact on a plan to involve the 40 colleges and universities. But a covenant writing process in which we all develop a statement, a short statement that says we all are responsible for addressing America's problems. We cannot leave it up to political leadership. We can't pretend to be innocent. We can't pretend to be outside the equation. Fourthly, we want to identify and work with political leaders and political candidates who will be we the people candidates, who will not overpromise, who will not pander, who will not infantilize, but who will say, we are willing and we are interested and we want to be partners with citizens. And finally, we want to prepare the ground for candidate forums and interactions in 2012, like we remember the Jesse Ventura Forum in 1999. So that if candidates overpromise, citizens challenge them. If citizens start whining about how we're not having all of our needs met, politicians challenge the citizens. And so we all have to think bigger and be bigger and remember the founding premise of our Constitution. We the people government. So that's the vision. We'll have more discussion for those who can stay. I wanted to say, before Sonia gives some more ways, we're starting a founders circle of people. We have the first two members who contribute $1,000 and who agreed to continue to give us advice and counsel and feedback as we develop a plan for the 10 House meetings at least that we're planning, envisioning. And then also help us to identify people to hold House meetings. Now, there are many other ways to be involved in many other levels of support that we also want to encourage. But I want to again thank all of you for coming. Say we all are citizens embarked in a great journey, and we all need to remember the spirit of the Constitution's preamble, we the people create government as our instrument and our meeting ground. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good to hear. This song is called We Have a Dream, and the first verse was inspired by some things that Dr. King has said, and the second verse is inspired by some things said by Nobel Peace Prize laureate Rigoberta Menchú. When we come back around to the chorus, I would love it if we could all sing it together, if you feel like you've caught on. So it just goes, we have a dream and we'll make it come true. have a dream for freedom and peace, the whole earth reconciled. So color my world with love. I wanna live with arms open wide. We've heard the sky must be darkest for stars to really shine bright. So we'll press on for redemption, draws nigh. We have a dream and we'll make it come true. Let's hear it. We have a dream and we'll make it come true. That's right. Keep the dream alive in your eyes, a clear, bright, vivid vision. Don't let your worries or fears deter your heart, deep hope and devotion. No, 'cause even with complexity, woes of economy and even recession, we've still got a whole lot of love each other and a big imagination. Oh yeah, we have a dream and we'll make it come true. We have a dream and we'll make it come true. Let's sing it out. We have a dream and we'll make it come true. We have a dream and we'll make it come true. Me and you. Thank you.
Sorry, I have to do this. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you, Harry. I want to spend a minute just in reflection, quiet reflection. And so my hope is that each one of us spends this moment seeing how Lucia is connected to Greg, is connected to Elizabeth, is connected to ourselves in a bigger context that we live in. So let's do that. As you all know, I don't do this. I love to entertain, but this is not what I generally do. So it's an honor to have you here for my Brer Lance. I'd only do it for a few people because I think that this work is that critical. Because I want it done. Forgive me for something. I see not one of us as the answer, but every single one of us as the answer. I see pastors connecting to a South African neighbor of mine who spends an awful lot of time in Ghana, to Joey Buckley's mom. Joey's a frequent guest at our home, and he's got the biggest smile you've ever seen. This work has been done before. He's seen it. She's done it. Elizabeth has built the framework.
my mom's done it. Caroline's doing it. My brother-in-law, Bob Friends, is doing it. His son is doing it in Nepal. But if we don't do a lot more, we're going to look a lot more like Nepal, a lot more like Israel, a lot less like middle class America. So I invite everyone in this room to do so in big, concrete ways. Thanks for coming. Thank you, artists. Original, ask for the stories. And the co-founder of Sages, Sonia Cairns.
Thanks. No, not at all. I wish I would be the person who would be asked to sing at events like this. But I never am. And I'm not going to.
You can borrow my guitar.
Oh, you wouldn't tell. Who among us would not like to be part of a more civil society in this country? Is there anyone who really feels that we're living up to the expectations of our children for this country, as President Obama talked to us last night? Is there anyone here who's satisfied with the level of political discourse that comes to the attention of our media or to our children's ears? I'm not, and I suspect that probably you are not. Last night, one of the things President Obama said that really struck me is that we have to figure out how to live more in alignment with our values. How do we act on what we really believe? He also used a phrase I loved in which he asked us to participate in the process to create a more perfect union. I was struck, Harry, when you talked about the notion that our leaders, however, can't do everything. And as much as we're inspired when some of them talk, particularly when they're talking about working together, we shouldn't expect that they are the answer. I think what the We the People project is doing is setting the stage for us to act, and to act in concurrence with our values. I have been very impressed when Harry was talking about some of the things that this project can do, and among us are people like Andrea and Dennis and others who've worked together, and I can't remember your first name, Elaine. There are many of you who've contributed to this. A lot of the work has already been started. There are about 6 things that I pulled out. The project will focus informed conversation on citizenship. The project will explore dynamic partnerships between citizens and government. It will encourage candidates and office holders currently to pledge to work together for citizenship. Imagine that. Think of our Congress right now. It will identify those who are We the People politicians, like the good mayor was introduced tonight, and will organize candidate forums on how we can live out We the People government. Those of you who've been involved in starting this initiative and who've been working on it during the last while have started this Founders Circle. And Harry has mentioned that we're inviting people to contribute $1,000 to be part of the Founders Circle. I would suggest if anyone wanted to contribute more, that would be fine too. And if you want to contribute less, that would be fine. But we're really inviting people who have come tonight, those of you who are here and other people you know who couldn't come tonight, to put your money where your mouth is. We're inviting you not only to give money, but to identify very specific resources that will aid in this work. I know one of the things, John, my husband, is back there, and I have decided that we want to have one of these forums in the downtown Minneapolis Lakes area. And we will do that. We want more of you to offer those kinds of meetings. So now, just like in church or temple, I see there's a person with a basket somewhere back there. And
Anyone with a green tag.
anybody with a green tag, maybe even
Should
with
be
a blue or
standing up
yellow
with the
tag,
basket.
take money too. But is someone here ready to become the first member of this founding circle, Founders Circle?
Forgive me, because it's me. Who's ever the highest bidder? Lance, Harry, I, that chocolate on. Whoever, that's my little, I will contribute, but those of you who know me. And I always win, do I not, except for Weston has beat me.
All right, Janelle and I are in for 1,000.
Wonderful, Teresa, Daly, and Greg. Terrific.
And I are in for 1,000.
Great. I wonder if these are forms for you to sign. And for others.
These are, I'm sorry, these are interest surveys to, if you're interested in the work, and if you'd like to write a check, anyone with a green tag will take your check and your interest survey. We want everyone to fill out an interest survey.
Okay.
Well, I want everybody to fill out a check, but that's me. These guys are far more polite than I am.
I'll bet that anybody, even without a tag, would take your check. But we're inviting you to give it to the right people. And another very special thing is that Harry has written this book called Commonwealth, A Return to Citizen Politics. They're not signed yet, but they will be. We're going to lock the doors, and Harry can't leave until there's a personal signature on every book to members of the Founders Circle.
Does Harry have it in a notebook form?
Wow,
You
what
will.
an interesting idea. Good idea. You should be a professional citizen.
Scientist, smart.
Great. You're going to have an opportunity, whether you pledge a gift tonight, whether you give a gift tonight, you're going to have an opportunity to stay engaged with this work both tonight, after the short break, and continuously. So I'm going to stop for now. I'm going to thank you. I'm going to invite you to keep thinking. I think every meeting I've been in for several days that had nothing to do with citizenship has focused on citizenship. Every person I've met during the last several days is saying, what can we do? What are we supposed to do? We have a great opportunity right now. Thank you very much.
So everyone again, everyone please fill out the interest survey. Everyone, even if you're not interested. Yes, but of course you all will be interested, right?